People told themselves their past with stories, explained their present with stories, foretold the future with stories. The best place by the fire was kept for the storyteller.
Hi, Yomi Lover here. So I had to open with the Storyteller opening because I love that series to death. It's honestly one of my favorite series because the way it takes on telling stories from fairy tales is it takes its time with them, and it does everything with puppeteering to Muppets to Jim Henson's special effects and shadow telling as like silhouette storytelling. It does that, and also just takes a classic twist on fairy tales from other countries such as Germanic countries, Russian stories, and also British stories that are long forgotten. For instance, Fear Not is a story that's adapted from The Youth Who Went to Learn What Fear Was from the Brothers Grimm fairy tales. So, honestly, that's why I like this, because I want to talk about it in comparison to The Little Mermaid. The Little Mermaid, I told everyone in one of my videos that I was not going to go see it for a really stupid reason, but I'm honestly not going to go see it because I am more of a fan of the Hans Christian Andersen version of the story, where she turns basically into sea foam, goes up with the daughters of air, and goes to heaven, and basically kisses the bride of the Prince Charming goodbye, and just, in a way, she just takes the L like a boss. And that's how the story ends in the Hans Christian Andersen story. Now, Disney is probably not going to do that. Disney is not going to tell a faithful adaptation of an actual story that it basically rendered mute and honestly tampered down so that way it could sell it off to kids more efficiently. And honestly, we've got the watered down version, which is The Little Mermaid from 1980, it's not 1980, but it's in the 1980s. That version, that's animated, and a lot of people point to that version as their version of The Little Mermaid that they like, but I honestly like the Hans Christian Andersen version of the story because this is a video about embracing traditionalism over modernity, and the modern take on The Little Mermaid is kind of just disappointing, because I heard from under the grapevine that Ariel saves herself and renders the Prince Charming. He is basically useless by the end of the plot, and she saves herself because empowerment and woman, I guess. But I'm not a fan of these retellings of the story, because I am a fan of the Hans Christian Andersen version, where it gives me the nitty-gritty and the meat of the actual story. I am honestly, like, for instance, these Disney takes on the fairy tales are disappointing, and they don't do anything new. If they honestly wanted to do something new, they would probably quit telling stories like Snow White the way that the Disney version tells the story, and actually give us the real version of Snow White, where the queen dances in iron shoes until she dies. And it's just horrific and terrible, and it's very grim. Get it? Brothers Grimm? So, honestly, they're not going to give us that version of any of the fairy tales, because these people don't know how to tell stories. They just don't know. They just know something was successful in the past, so let's remake it and shove it off to other people as a successful live-action remake, like The Lion King, where, that story was successful, so they're gonna just push that off onto audiences and give us a live-action version. And the fact that these remakes keep making money, I just get sickened by it. It sickens me to a T. I can't stand the fact that these remakes are making money, because stories like The Godfather, or Frotrod, or even stories like Sleeping Beauty, the actual Sleeping Beauty, those stories are not getting retold, and they're getting these remakes, or King Thrushbeard, those are pretty good stories. The story of Little Snow White, which is pretty good. And, let's see, there's another good one. The Golden Bird, I've honestly heard of that one. That one's really good. Honestly, these are stories that they're never going to retell in Disney versions, because Disney lacks creativity and doesn't know where its roots are at. And its roots are in traditional stories. So, they're not going to do that. They're honestly going to keep making these remakes till the end of time, because people are going to keep going to see them, and feeding them money, and continuing the cycle. Like, seriously, what are they going to remake next? Brother Bear? Oh god, please don't remake Brother Bear. That is actually a really good story. That's a really good one. And, honestly, why don't they just, if they want to do diversity and all this stuff, why don't they remake The Princess and the Frog with all its racial stereotypes intact? Why don't they just do that? Honestly, it's just, I can't take it, because it's just these retellings of the story, the original versions of Grimm's fairy tales and fairy tales in general, just isn't good, because they lack those qualities that, let's say, the storyteller brings to the table, in that it tells it in its original European setting, its European-esque fairy tale-like flavor. And each episode, the reason why I brought Jim Henson's Storyteller into the fray was because that series, the way it tackles each fairy tale that it tells, does it in a very creative way, and does it within 30 minutes. So you can get a very close-knit idea, because the way these fairy tales are told, they're told like that, in that they're like chapters, in each chapter of the book is a little segment from it, and it's told really quickly, in a way that can be easily digestible to anybody who's reading it. So, that's why I praise the storyteller so much, because it knows how to tell fairy tales in a very interesting way, that's very brisk, and very, very to the point, that Disney fails to do, because you have things like The Little Mermaid being dragged out to how many more hours? The original Little Mermaid was 89 minutes, and it didn't outstay its welcome. This one's like an hour 20 minutes, and it totally outstays its welcome. We got a stupid song about Scuttlebutt. I don't even know why Scuttle got a song. Scuttle in the animated version can't even sing, so why would you get Awkwafina a song? Oh, because she's Awkwafina. Just like, oh my god. The dumbing down of our culture is just, it's mind-blowing to me. How do we, if you want to tell a story with more diversity, for instance, why don't you tell Polynesian stories, or Putapechan stories, or Apache stories from Native American lore or something? And they're not going to do that, because I don't think they see any they don't see money in it. So if they don't see money in it, they're not going to do it. They're just going to continue rehashing these live-action remakes that take terrible, abysmal takes on characters that we know and love. And this is what gets me, too, is I know people say Ralph Breaks the Internet, that movie is a piece of shit, and no one likes it. But honestly, when they rendered all those CGI princesses in one room with Penelope in there, honestly, I thought for a second, brilliant as it was, that scene, Disney could have easily have just given us a fully animated CGI version of The Little Mermaid, done with CGI like Ralph the Movie Maker. That's not Ralph the Movie Maker, sorry. Not Ralph the Movie Maker. I meant Ralph Breaks the Internet. God, I got them confused. I'm sorry. Anyways, like Ralph Breaks the Internet, they could have just done a version like that, a version of The Little Mermaid that keeps her a redhead, and just have that version of The Little Mermaid, where it's a faithful retelling of the animated version, but it's CGI instead. And you have all the voice actors just come in and they voice the characters the way they want to voice them. And you could just have versions of the princess stories like that. like Ralph Breaks the Internet versions of them. And we don't have to waste our time with these abysmal remakes that you keep shitting out of the machine that is Disney because you like money and instead of actual fun storytelling. It's just, if you're not going to be faithful to the adaptation, at least give us a quality version of the story. At least give us a quality version of each story that we have come to love over the years because Disney animated these fairy tales. At least do that. So, honestly, when I tip my hat to the storyteller, I really hope that maybe Netflix picks it up and decides to do a Jim Henson version of fairy tales again, like they picked up The Dark Crystal, because that series turned out to be a success after they picked it up. If they're gonna do that, they might as well go the full way, you know? And it's really frustrating because I just don't see fairy tales staying in the hands of Disney because Disney refuses to tell faithful adaptations of it. Or adaptations of these stories. And it's just, you know, you could be giving the audience so much more than what we're getting. Well, anyways, that's all I wanted to say concerning my thoughts on The Little Mermaid. Once again, it's part of my movies that I plan to not see. And I'm glad I didn't, because from what people keep saying about it online, it was abysmal. It was not fun, and you might as well just go home and leave your brain cells be, because this brain infestation of dumbassery is going to be infectious. Alright, well that's all I had to say. Peace out.